So today we're talking about resilience, and I thought we would start. Well, actually, I came across something today, and it occurred to me to read to you guys. So I think I will first read it, and this is a quote from Sydney Banks, who was the guy who first articulated these three principles. Although at the time he didn't call them three principles, but he did talk about universal mind, consciousness, and thought. And so it says here, the reason life gets easier is because you start to realize within yourself there's something deeper than you ever thought before. And you start to realize it is a hidden thing from the mind. It is something which is non-tangible. It can't be seen. It can't be touched. It can't be told. It can't be read. It's a space. I'm just going to read it again. The reason life gets easier is because you start to realize within yourself there's something deeper than you ever thought before. And you start to realize it is a hidden thing from the mind. It is something which is non-tangible. It can't be seen. It can't be touched. It can't be told. It can't be read. It's a space. So I was thinking about resilience, and I was thinking about what it means to me. Yeah, and it occurred to me that I'd like to start by asking, what does it mean to you all? And I guess maybe my question's even a little bit more specific than that. When you think of needing resilience or wanting resilience, what type of situations come to mind for you? I'm going to make a list. Challenges. What kind of challenges?
Maybe for me, difficult challenges is what comes to mind.
Okay. Do you have an example?
Do you have a week? Well, difficult problems that arise, be it in family or in personal, that you have to tackle that don't have easy solutions. And that sort of you have to dig deep to figure out how you're going to handle this, or
Okay, so family, not easy solutions,
right.
requiring digging deep.
Yeah.
Confrontation.
Confrontation.
When I think of resilience, I think of the word that comes to me is something unexpected that throws you off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me too. Yeah. Something unexpected that throws you off.
It could be something you tend to think of it as negative, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah, and I think of resilience as being the recovery from those things.
Right, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Huh. I was thinking it more about in a stressful situation, your ability to stay centered and put it in perspective and not let your thoughts take you away on a big tsunami wave that's stress,
Yeah.
because you can see it for what it is. I don't think I've ever been successful, but at least now I understand what I might be able to do if I somehow could channel the knowledge of what it is in the moment of the stress.
So like grace during stress?
Grace during?
Grace. Grace, maybe that's
Grace
the word
under
for you.
stress, is that what you
Yeah,
said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've never done it. The only thing I can say is that in the last few years I've realized in my reflection afterwards, that I didn't have to get carried away with it, but I did.
And so the resilience, if you were more resilient, you would in those moments maybe be more present and less reactive.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. Tim?
I can think of a couple of examples. One would be coming up against failure or disappointment and finding a way to get past that with a view towards the future and how am I going to survive, what am I going to do to perhaps reorient towards success. And I generally will see the upside, not necessarily in the moment, but eventually everything that I've gained by taking a detour and learning other things on the way. And that's more concrete in terms of, let's say not getting into a program or something that's very concrete that way. But my biggest example of resilience for me, which is something that I'll share with all of you, is that my wife suffered a devastating illness and over 20 years deteriorated and died. And I needed to cope with each progressive loss that she had and continue on as her husband and caregiver until the very end.
Yeah.
And I found ways to be resilient at this point.
It's so interesting because when I think of the word resilience, for some reason in my head, it's like the after the fact, and yet every single one of you talked about the during, the during, the whatever it is that we feel like we would like grace through, and Barbara, you were saying that when something comes up unexpected, right? Like, I mean, we always have things in our lives that are unexpected, and we kind of, on some level, we probably expect the unexpected. But when we go down a path and something hits us that we weren't wanting to have to deal with, I guess. And I had cancer in 2016, and the same thing. Like, how, some people can go through a process like that where they feel very much a victim. And then for other people, it's much more graceful. And so where does that grace come from, or that inner strength to go through something that's hard?
And yet I think that, sort of along those lines, the word submissive comes to mind. So you could either submit to something that's happening to you. And somewhere in my head, I'm feeling like maybe that's some form of resilience. I don't know, but it's a way to survive.
And there was an article in there about I think that there's a new play coming out about Anne Frank. They opened up this article by saying how resilient she was. And again, she was in hiding. She was in this, small space with a lot of people, and she writes about it. And again, kind of back to that level of grace through a difficult situation. And so, what you were saying about kind of submitting to it, I think that's really, it's a huge part of it. So when we talk about 3 principles of universal mind, consciousness, and thought, the place where we have the opportunity to let go is in the recognition that there's a universal energy, a universal wisdom in which we all live that is much wiser than any of us can be individually. And when we relax and allow that space that Sid Banks was talking about to be our support and to kind of let ourselves flow down the river without resistance, then there is just something easier about it. And I know that when I was going through my my treatments for cancer, one of the things I used to say all the time was, I just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And, you know, that's the place of just grace, because it was very clear to me that that was all I could do. In any moment there was a next step, and that was all I could take. Take that next step, take that next step, take that next step. At the same time, the fact that we think, the fact that we live in a world of thought plays into this. And it's my opinion, and I have to say, I consider myself a really resilient person. Like, so to be lacking in resilience is something that isn't a real, it's not a big experience that I've ever had. So my hypothesis, I guess, is that when people get stuck in their thinking, that prevents their resilience. So if they start to think that what's happening to them is that they become a victim, and the world is treating them in a certain way, and that their experience comes from something outside of them as opposed to inside of them, that I think that can really put a barrier up for the recovery. And you know, things go. You know, life is crazy, right? Like, I mean, we go to work. We don't always get along with everyone we work with. You know, we have relationships where we might fight with people, and people break up. I ran into a friend of mine yesterday who's getting divorced. You know, and we just kind of looked at each other and was like, yeah, life. You know, life happens, right? And so there's something about this, the power of thought, and the power that we give it, and the recognition of whether it's coming, or whether our experiences are coming from us versus our experiences coming from something outside of us. And I'll give you one more example, which really doesn't have anything to do with resilience, but I saw this on TV yesterday morning, and it just hit me so hard. We were watching the Today Show, and there was this 10-year-old girl who climbed El Capitan.
Yes.
Yeah. And they were showing shots of her climbing, and this rock face, they put it next to the tallest building in the world. It's taller than the tallest building in the world. And so this 10-year-old girl, she climbs up the whole thing with her dad, and then they were showing shots of it, and then they also were showing shots and a video of the guy who climbed it without ropes. Do you know about that? They climbed the whole thing without ropes. There's a documentary done on it. My reaction to just watching the clips they were showing on the Today Show, like, I was getting vertigo just watching the TV. and so for me it was such a clear example of me creating my reality of I could never do that. And this 10-year-old girl has a whole different outlook on the world about what she could do in that circumstance. And then this guy who climbed it without ropes, he has a whole nother level of thought-created reality. So while that's not about resilience, it to me it was just such a clear example of how our personal thinking creates our experience in the world.